Hello out there in YouTube land. My name's Eric Francis Coppolino here with another version of Planet Waves TV. I believe this would be Season 3, Episode 3. I think maybe that's true. Anyway, we'll sort that out in the publishing details. But hi, today's Friday. Tomorrow, Saturday, is the full moon. No, wait, I've got that wrong. The full moon takes place on Sunday morning, March 12th at 9:53:47 a.m. Eastern time. I guess that's going to be an hour off because of daylight savings time, which they do just to mess with our heads. And I want to talk a little bit about this full moon chart, but the full moon is not really the main event in the sky right now, and I don't want to get too sidetracked on it, but I will mention it. It's worth mentioning. It's a full moon that is that's opposite Chiron, which brings Chiron into the conversation, which kind of makes it a bit of a bigger full moon than it might ordinarily be, and Chiron's not the only planet involved in the configuration. But the thing I really want to talk to you about today is the third iteration of the Uranus-Eris conjunction for this cycle. When outer planets get together and make a conjunction or any other aspect, it'll happen a few times in a very short period of time, and then it won't happen again for like another century, and then it'll happen a few more times in a very short period of time. And the Uranus-Eris conjunction began officially, made its first exact conjunction last year, and there were two contacts of that conjunction. The third one is coming up on the 17th of March, and that is really the big event in astrological history right now, and it really is a matter of astrological history because this is it's a pretty profound thing to be happening. I want to convey again what I think that's about. So first, let's look at the chart. Let's get a sense of what this chart is about and how you would read a chart. And in this case, now let's see, where am I going to put this here? There. How do we do this? I guess I'm going to put it right here. All right. So the full moon, by the way, happens when the sun is opposite the moon, or spoken more properly, when the moon is opposite the sun. So the moon moves faster, and once a month it comes by and makes an opposition to the sun. So for example, if the sun is in Gemini and the moon is in Sag, that's the full moon. If the sun is in Taurus and the moon is in Scorpio, that's the full moon. In the case of the current full moon, the sun is moving through late Gemini. Excuse me, that was an example. The sun is moving through late Pisces, and the moon is about to move through Virgo. So this is going to be the Virgo full moon, which happens during Pisces time when the sun is in Pisces. So the full moon is always an opposition aspect. That is what it means. And if you want to understand opposition aspects, understand the full moon. And hey, we have an interesting opposition in the chart besides the full moon to consider. So, all right. Here is the sun. It's represented by a little circle with a dot in it. And the sun is currently conjunct Chiron. That's that little glyph that's like a kind of a K or a key, and that is Pallas Athene. It's drawn like Venus, only instead of a circle up on top, it's kind of a diamond-shaped thing up on top. And so there is, at the moment, a triple conjunction involving the sun, and this comes to a peak after the full moon, but it's really it's a thing about now, and it's at its peak all the way through the weekend and into the middle of next week. All right, so Sun, Chiron, Pallas, Athene, all grouped together, and then opposite that, the moon will be in Virgo on the 12th, on Sunday. Gets there, let's see when. Probably gets there pretty soon, actually. And that is this opposition is the full moon as we're about to experience it. So it's the moon opposite the sun and opposite Chiron and opposite Pallas Athene. So it's a compound aspect, and this is the kind of thing that differentiates one full moon from another. For example, in addition to what sign something is in, the planets aspecting that thing make the thing what it is. So one thing about astrology is it's very relational. So you look at a point in the chart, but then you study all the other points in relationship to that point. So you're never really just fixating on one thing. You're looking at it as a gestalt, the whole picture. And in this picture, we get an amplification of this conjunction of Sun, Chiron, Pallas. Now that conjunction all by itself is really interesting because it's Pallas Athene, an asteroid, I think the second or third asteroid, I'm pretty sure the second asteroid, in a conjunction to Chiron. Now I mentioned this on Planet Waves FM last week, that experience I had up on the Acropolis in Egypt, where I wanted to do some token ritual for Athene, the goddess of Athens. And so I was up on the Acropolis on kind of a cloudy day, and it was right at the end, and there were no tourists up there. And I went to Athene's temple, which is called the Erechtheum, not the Parthenon. That was the treasury and a munitions storage facility, which was bombed by the Turks at some point in the 20s. That's why the Parthenon is such a mess. But anyway, I went over to the Erechtheum knowing that that's where Athene lives, and I couldn't go in because they have it fenced off. And I sat down next to it and lit some incense and stuck it in between some marble blocks. And right away, Athene came to me. And she kind of came in straight from the front end direction. And she said, basically, she said, I'm going to leave this card up because it makes the picture look better. And she said, what you have to know about me is that I've given up an element of my femininity so that I can do my job, which is a kind of a guardianship job, in a similar way that you, who embody Chiron, has given up an element of your masculinity so that you can perform the function that you have to do in the world. And one of the ways I do what I do is I'm able to access inner feminine resources. So I don't consider myself strictly male. Of course, everyone has Venus and Mars in their chart, and everyone has both male and female sex hormones, and I work with this consciously. And Athena came to me and said, well, we've both given up something to have an exchange to be able to do something better, to be able to fulfill a purpose, to have something more. And that was all she said, and I thanked her, and she left, and that was it. And I wasn't, when I told that story for some reason on Tuesday in Planet Waves FM, I wasn't consciously thinking about the conjunction of Athena and Chiron, unless I forgot that I was. But anyway, they're now in a conjunction, and it's a beautiful conjunction. It's rare; it only happens once every 4 years, so it's kind of in that, things that don't happen very typically. And so the way I interpret that is that the Chiron in Pisces is holds that piece of the masculine willing to be feminine in some respects, and Pallas Athene holds the energy of the feminine willing to be masculine. Of course, Athena was born from her father's head. She had a non-sexual birth, right? She's born from Jupiter's head. His head cracks open, and she comes out in full armor with her weapon, and that's not very feminine in the way that we think of feminine being. And so when you put these two elements together, there's a kind of a completion that happens. It's a little bit like yin yang fitting together, and we get the missing piece of both. And so there's something here about gender completion. And one cool thing about our contemporary times is that there's a lot of discussion of gender. And this is important because gender is one of the worst prisons that people are caught in, and there's a lot of defensiveness around it. And when you look at the people at these meetings where the trans kids want to be able to use the bathroom that they want to use, and then you look at the environment that they're in. You don't just look at the figure, right? That's the Gavin. He's got a really good point. I mean, it makes perfect sense. But then you look at all the people who oppose him, you get a picture of the environment, and these people pounding on the podium and completely freaked out that someone's using a bathroom they don't approve of, that gives you a clue how powerful of a business gender is, how seriously people take it, how much they agonize over it, how insecure it makes them, and how much of people's identity is bound up in gender. And if you've ever known anyone transitioning, it's very sensitive because they're personally unraveling all of the coding and conditioning that's associated with gender. And most of the time, by the time they're out, they're doing it in a public way. And it's really pretty intense to go through this. So, but as I was saying, the good thing about the times we're in, one of the really great things is that there is the question of gender being consciously raised and consciously talked about. And so we get something of a picture of completion and of kind of like the parts fitting together with the conjunction of Pallas Athene and Chiron. Now, there's one other point to make with that, and hey, I wasn't planning on channeling so long on this, but it sounding good. That one of the things Pallas Athene is about is strategy, and this can be applied to anything. So whenever you see Pallas Athene in the chart in any kind of an aspect to anything, consider that aspect pattern from the standpoint of strategy. It's just a kind of a topical cue. You can think of the asteroids as saying not necessarily so much about what they mean, although there are some interesting books about that, and I would dare to say they're all written by Martha Lang Westcott at treehousemountain.com, who's done 40 years of brilliant work on the asteroids. But you can also put them in as a topical cue. So, for example, in any aspect pattern where you see Pallas, you can say, "What's the question of strategy in this aspect pattern?" And with the conjunction to Chiron, which is always going to be always going to carry the topic of healing process, the question of Pallas Athene conjunct Chiron is, what's the healing strategy? What's the healing plan? Now, like a good work plan, it's flexible. The concept of, for example, a work plan is to get you to think through the steps in the process and to get you to think through what you need, and you make a shopping list and you figure, all right, I want to start this project at 10 o'clock at night and Home Depot closes at 9. I better go before it, all that. A work plan, like a healing plan, is not a guarantee of the way things are going to go or even the exact sequence, but it sets your mind thinking. So Pallas Athene conjunct Chiron is one way of framing the question, what's the plan for healing? What's the basic agenda for healing? And so while you might not be able to predict how your process is going to go, you might say that you're going to need someone to help you with nutritional issues, and you're going to need someone to help you with certain physical body issues. It might be a chiropractor, it might be a yoga teacher, it might be an osteopath who's going to help with the specific topic focus of your physical body or some part of it, your skeletal system, muscular system. And then you might also say, well, I need a therapist I can talk to as part of this plan. And then, but you're not saying what you're exactly going to do. You're just saying, well, I need these few type of people helping me. That's a concept of a healing plan. A healing plan might also say, all right, I'm carrying a little bit of extra weight and I realize it's not healthy to lose too much weight too fast. I'm going to give this 2 years. And you might take the first 3 months adjusting your diet to bring down the carbohydrates and so forth and learn. And then in your healing plan, there's still 7 whole seasons left to do whatever. Right? So it's not about predicting or predictating what is going to happen, but rather having a sketch, kind of a little bit like this chart is a sketch. And you say, all right, that's there. Maybe I need to move that there and do this a little bit of a different way. So Pallas conjunct Chiron is healing plan. And then when you make it conjunct the sun and then opposite the moon, that puts the emphasis on now. That's saying this is about this moment. And as this full moon comes to a peak Saturday night and into Sunday, the topic is available, or it might come up, but I like to view astrology as being either or. Either the subject might spontaneously arrive in that spontaneous eruption of symbolism, as my colleague Jeffrey Cornelius likes to call it, or you might say, well, this is what the chart looks like. What's the topic this chart's describing? And then you take advantage of that and you work that territory. That, by the way, is what writing the horoscope is about. That's pretty much what I'm doing. I don't use charts that are too much different than this to write the horoscope column. And I'm looking at the chart and seeing what's available, sorting it out by sign, and then making some recommendations, making some suggestions, or proposing a narrative that might fit what you've got going on. Good horoscope writer always lets the reader bring some of their own material to the table. You start the discussion, they complete or carry the discussion forward. So it's a horoscope is kind of like a suggestion. And that's how you can get a lot in 50 words. You just make a suggestion. And if it resonates every now and then, or every time you read, you got something going on. All right. Next thing going on in here. So that happens, and that's good. Then this leads into next week, which is a very exciting week. And there's two important conjunctions. First of all, the one I've been describing, Sun, Pallas, Chiron, is exact on Tuesday. It's very exciting and very positive, especially if you're a Pisces, such as myself. It means that you have available some, let's say, extra mojo for designing and planning and being the architect of your own life and of your own future. And for those who are concerned about the future, I say pay attention to your environment right now. But the second thing that happens, and it is in some ways bigger, in many ways bigger, because it's rarer and it is so descriptive of the entire landscape of our lives, is the conjunction of Uranus and Eris. So I've written about this a lot. I can never tell what's coming across and what's not. Sometimes I get little clues, but what I've been first of all, let's just talk about this structurally. Eris is a very slow-moving planet, and if Saturn were in Aries, it would take Saturn 2.5 years to get through Aries. If Jupiter were in Aries, it would take it about 1 year to get through Aries. Chiron, which will soon be in Aries, will take about 9 years to go through Aries. But not Miss Eris. Eris takes 130 years to go through Aries. It's very slow, and it's about at its furthest point from the sun when it's in Aries. That's called aphelion, far away. And that's what we have happening. So Eris takes so long to go through Aries that at the beginning of its stay in Aries, in 1927 and 1928, Uranus was at the very beginning of Aries, right when Eris was there. And so there was a Uranus-Eris conjunction in Aries, on the Aries point, on the first degree of Aries, in 1927 and 1928. And when you look at that phase of history, you find out a few interesting things. First of all, the first commercial radio station was licensed. Second, you find out that television was in its infancy. They had that famous little doll of Felix the Cat on a record player platter spinning around and around as these electrical engineers figured out how the hell to convey a visual image through a lens and make it be an electrical signal. I mean, this is a kind of a crazy concept. And a crude version of the transformer was patented at that time. And so the writing was on the wall for the mass media era. Mass media being people simultaneously exposed to the same information or the same broadcast. And it was a mere 10 years after that, 10 or 11 years after that Orson Welles had his famous War of the Worlds broadcast in 1938, I believe, which, sent the nation into a panic, believing that Martians were coming in, and we got an image of what happens under mass media conditions. Then came TV. So radio is this thing that's kind of coming in the very late 20s through the 30s into the 40s, and by the 40s, TV is very gradually starting to happen. Still, World War II is very much a radio event, and so it's really, in truth, not till the 1950s that TV is happening. And you think, how old are you? How old are your parents? This is very recent to have a culture driven by these forces that pretty much just showed up on the scene the equivalent of yesterday. So the dawn of that era is the Uranus-Eris conjunction of 1927 and 1928. And during the ensuing years, Eris went from here to about here, most of the way through Aries, but not all the way through Aries. And because it spends 130 years in Aries, Uranus, which spends only 84 years going around the whole sun, but was till recently considered a very slow-moving planet till we knew about things like Eris, makes a second conjunction to Eris in Aries, and that's what we have going on now. So the digital era and the electronic broadcast era is dawning at the first Uranus-Eris conjunction. The second Uranus-Eris conjunction arrives, and we are under full digital conditions. I'm sitting in my nice little astrology studio, and I can talk to you on gear that you can just have tomorrow. You go onto sweetwater.com, and you too can have this whole studio for not so much money. And much else. The thing about what I'm calling full digital conditions, and my impression of the Uranus-Eris conjunction is it is the sigil of, it is the very symbol of full digital. Full digital means that no aspect of life exists independently of the internet. Now, that's a slight exaggeration, but only a slight exaggeration. There are some occasional facets of life. Like I wonder what Henrietta St. Francis, who's sitting here next to me, thinks about the internet. I don't know what she thinks about the internet. She's not really that influenced by it. But I can do research if I've got to help her with something. I can have information in a matter of minutes. And so even Henrietta St. Francis has a life that is in some ways influenced by the internet, and I've put her picture up a lot of times and so forth. Everything filters through the internet or is lodged on the internet in some way. Every time you drink a cup of coffee that's been processed by your debit card, and every time you purchase gas at 7-Eleven, it's all being processed by the internet. And this is crazy. It means that life has become the internet. So we went from you turn on the radio, you wait for it to warm up, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt talks to you and tells you how wonderfully the war is going and thanks you very much for only eating 4 ounces of beef a week. And now everything is run through, filtered through, or in some way experienced through the framework of the internet. That is full digital conditions. And we don't think about this very consciously very often. And as Marshall McLuhan, my spiritual grandfather, pointed out, that no one really is thinking about these things before they happen. No one thinks about the impact of the iPhone. What's this thing going to do to us? Well, Apple's thinking about how cool it is and how much money they can make. They're not thinking about how this is going to hurt people. They're thinking about how they're going to try to master the marketplace. And so these forces that are driven by marketplace thinking and by the thinking of technological advance are completely detached from the social and spiritual impact of what the device has. And these things are changing social life in every single way. They're completely rescripting all of our concepts of what it means to be a person, what it means to be in a body, what it means to think, what it means to remember, what it means to be a self, what you mean when you say I am. And this is going on in Aries. It's a complete rewriting of what it means when you say I am. There's my title for this YouTube. It always comes out, and sometimes it comes out at the end. And so So we're in this era where this conjunction is happening. And like the Uranus-Pluto conjunction of the 1960s, which was exact in 65, 66. Mind you, it was rumbling in 63 when JFK got shot, and in 64 when the Beatles arrived in the United States. But the exact conjunction happens for the first time in 65, and it completes in 1966. And then this thing we call the 60s takes off, and all of these changes happen. That was associated with a conjunction of Uranus and Pluto, kind of the Eris of its era. Then, in the early 1990s, there was a conjunction of Uranus and Neptune, another slow-moving point that completely changed the map. It completely rewrote what we think of as Europe and Eastern Europe, and it opened up China, and the Berlin Wall fell down. There were the Tiananmen Square protests, and then instead of opening up to democracy, China opens up to capitalism. So it's like the world's only kind of Maoist capitalist environment. What happened to capitalists being evil? Now, China is like the best capitalist that there is. Like, they know how to do it better than anyone. They got a big country, a lot of resources, a lot of people, and like what on my desk, I can't imagine what's not made in China that's on my desk. Go try to find something not made in China. It's almost a joke. And so the Uranus-Neptune conjunction, once again, rewrote the world. It rewrote economics. It rewrote geopolitics. And now we're in the early 20-teen, mid-20, late, wow, time's going by, late 20-teensies, and we have the next approximate one in this sequence. So the activating force here is Uranus. First it conjoins Pluto, then it conjoins Neptune. Now it's conjoining Eris. And so we are in a moment of radical transition. Now, if you don't know that already, lower the f-stop here. I can't control the f-stop on this camera. I wish I could. The world is in this perfectly mad state. And one of the ways to understand the perfectly mad state of the world is to study the Uranus-Eris conjunction, which I have been doing. So if you're interested in the Uranus-Eris conjunction, go onto a website called planetwaves.fm, and toward the top of the column on the right-hand side, you'll see Uranus-Eris Internet resource area. And there I have put up maybe 15 articles I've sent out to my subscribers in months and years past, which analyze the digital environment. And the message of media studies really is examine the environment. Media as used by consumers is all about the figure on the screen. Video is all about fixating on a person's face. Watch, turn on the TV and try to look at like what's in the corner of the screen while you're on TV, or look at people in the background. It's very hard to do. You tend to fixate right on the face, like your iPhone finds the face of the person that you're photographing, or it thinks it does, and it's not so easy to look at things that are in the background. I figure you're looking at things in the background when you're doing this, but I deliberately put an interesting background into the picture. But the key of media studies is to look at the environment, study the surrounding environment if you want to know what's going on. If you want to understand Mr. Trump, don't study Mr. Trump. Study the environment around him. You can study anything from his personal life and upbringing to the country, the state of the country he lives in, which is more interesting. Media studies equals environmental studies, and that, by the way, is my approach to astrology. So if you're curious about this subject and you want to learn more about the times that we are in right now, take a look at this resource area on planetwaves.fm. Quick note of thanks. We're running a membership drive at Planet Waves. We've been doing this almost exclusively by email, but if you're one of the people who responded, who signed up, and either reactivated your subscription or got a new one, thank you very much. We're doing very well with this. We've raised enough money to keep us going for a while, and now I'm trying to get a little bit in the bank so we can solve some problems, pay some bills, solve some technical issues, and have a cushion. Because as I've said before, you're looking at me on the on your little phone or monitor or whatever it is. And there's a lot of people next to me and behind me who are helping make possible everything in Planet Waves. And if you're one of these people who just kind of sees me on YouTube, check out what we've got. Planet Waves FM is a great place to start. You can link through to all of our other sites, planetwaves.fm. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, shoot me an email at efc@ericfrancis.com. All right. Catch you next week. Bye for now.